Hey everyone, my name is Getty Hill. I am the CEO and co-founder of GFX Labs, and I've had the pleasure to get to know the Chainlink team over the last few years through various things we've done with them. But today I'm particularly talking about how we've used Chainlink automation in our new trading platform. So for those of you who are frequent users of DEXs, or at least probably at all familiar with Uniswap and DeFi, everyone's probably seen this interface before. This is probably a very familiar one. Even if you've not used the exact Uniswap one, you've probably seen a clone of it somewhere else. It's like the most used interface in all of DeFi, probably. Very simple for anyone who's done any type of trading. It's lovely. You can put in your quantity at the top, you select your 2 tokens, it gives you an output. Its simplicity is one of the reasons why everyone's loved it. That being said, this interface, in the grand scheme of things, accounts for like $40 billion, $50 billion worth of like annual volume, and maybe 2% of overall spot market share in the crypto space. This interface is the one that I'm so certain that everyone's also very familiar with. The Binance trading interface, the thing that actually accounts for 60% of their overall market share in the crypto space. We were tasked with the problem with the Uniswap Foundation, came to us and said, hey, how do we actually get folks to grow our ecosystem? How do we get volume to go up on Uniswap? How do we get folks off of centralized and traditional exchanges and onto the more trustless DeFi solutions? And we actually started on this problem last year when FTX was still a thing, and a big part of our pitch to them was like, how do we get folks off FTX? And so fast forward, we put out this 2 months ago, and this is Oku, an advanced trading interface for Uniswap v3. So the whole idea here, and hopefully you're thinking to yourself, is like, gosh, that looks an awful lot like Uniswap. It doesn't, clearly. It looks like Binance, and that's the whole point. Really, we want folks to be very comfortable when they make that transition over from Binance, any other centralized exchange, so that way they can have an intuitive trading interface that, okay, it's not a decentralized exchange anymore, I have my order book. We had tons of folks come to us when we were doing our user research and said, I like the creature comfort features that are available on a traditional exchange. I don't want to use a DEX because I can't place limit orders. They don't have order books. They don't have my trading view charts. And we just one by one went down the list. With Uniswap v3 and concentrated liquidity, we can derive a synthetic order book. That's exactly what you see up there. This is the USDC ETH market. You have a trading view chart integration. So for all the folks who love using their trading view charts on all the different platforms, perfect. You can use it on every single Uniswap v3 pool now across every single chain that we support, which is practically all the major chains at this point. For folks who want their watch list of all their other favorite assets, you have that up on the top right-hand side. For everyone who wants to see all the live trading activity as trades actually come in. One of the most entertaining things to look at when you're looking at a centralized exchange and orders are flowing in real time. You're like, wow, this is great. And unfortunately, while maybe ETH transactions are a little slower, with the evolution of all these L2s these days, you can go and look at like the Arbitrum ETH USDC market, and there are trades constantly coming in. And you can go right on our interface, unlike a centralized exchange, click on each individual trading, be like, hey, this guy just traded like $1 million. Who is this person? And just click on it, and it just, bam, straight into Etherscan. You can see what this person did, who they are, and then pass off all their information. If you want your whole robust order history, which is one of the funniest things in my mind, every single DEX platform, for the most part, has no order history. You have to go back and do your taxes at the end of the year, or just do any type of personal accounting. It's a nightmare in almost every scenario. Maybe you're using a third-party tool. Who knows? It's a granted thing, the thing that we take for granted at any of the centralized exchanges. You're going to have your order history. They're going to be able to export it to a CSV file for you, easy. That's something that none of the platforms do. So with Oku, your whole order history is here, regardless if you placed the trade on our interface or in the last 2-3 years of Uniswap v3's lifespan. If you placed it, we'll have all your order history. Now, market orders are, of course, the bread and butter. And this gets to the point of where we've used Chainlink automation. Market orders are the bread and butter of the interface. That's what everyone uses. But the number one piece of the feedback that we got while doing user research was like, hey, if I can't place a limit order on chain, like a real limit order, there's no shot I'm making the transition over. That's like the number one thing that people use on centralized exchanges is limit orders. And so that's what we worked on with Chainlink automation, is using and bringing limit orders on chain. Now, a quick recap before we get into the details of what we do with our automation. Here is the simplicity of what automation is. Essentially, you have 2 core functions, one that is off-chain, one that is on-chain. You have a perform upkeep, you have a check upkeep. This check upkeep function is the thing that's actually monitored by the Chainlink network, and is just meant to be a read function. They just keep calling or saying, hey, Is there anything for me to do here? Do I need to do anything at all? And the moment there is something to do, it's moving on to the perform upkeep function, casting it on chain, doing whatever type of action you programmed into your automation contract, and just pushing it through. As long as you've registered your upkeep with the network so that where they're paying attention and provided a bit of link, you can trust that this system is going to be constantly running. Now, what we've done to really bring online the best limit orders in DeFi is utilize Uniswap v3's concentrated liquidity functionality. So some of you may have used 1-inch matchas, 0x's, other limit orders exist in the space. You've probably been disappointed by how they functioned. The reality is like these orders tend to be passive, and I like to call ours active. What I exactly mean by that is when you use some of these passive systems, they typically function more like stop orders. You have a mark, that's your price. They're waiting for the market to come down to your price, and then they're trying to place an order thereafter. Whereas with our orders, you're actually a part of the market. And what we mean by that is we're using Uniswap v3's concentrated liquidity. So with concentrated liquidity, most people think of it as like, okay, rather than in v2 providing a range from 0 to infinity or a full range, you might be providing an ETH USDC market from $1,000 to $2,000. Now, we can recreate a limit order entirely on chain by saying, let's just place a range position from $1,000 to $1,000. And if I put in 1,000 USDC into that, if the price actually ever descends to $1,000, my position will go from 100% USDC to 100% ETH. And this is the beauty of it. Now, the problem is, okay, well, in volatile markets, this is an LP position. If the market goes down to $900, I will have been filled in my position, but if it goes back up to $1,100, it'll flip back around. And so the trouble is, okay, we actually need someone either to be at the computer and click the button at the right time to withdraw my liquidity, which isn't practical, that's not what folks want out of a limit order, or we need some type of automation system that we can delegate that role to. And that's exactly what we've done with Chainlink automation. So first and foremost, this is the front end. Everything I described, we want to abstract away as much as possible to make it very seamless for folks who are coming from Binance, any of the centralized exchanges, to our interface, so they don't really have to understand what's going on here. You can place your limit order by selecting your market, your token, what you want to buy, sell, the price, you place the order. Simple enough. And then you have your whole order management side. I want to see what my open orders are, canceled orders, historical orders. I want to be able to cancel my open orders, etc. All of it as simple as possible. Now, how does this actually work on the automation side of things? You have the on-chain upkeep, and you have the off-chain side of it as well. So what it's doing is we have this limit order registry contract that is the actual on-chain piece. Everything you saw in our interface is the canonical Uniswap v3 contracts. We haven't changed a thing. This project was entirely funded by the Uniswap Foundation, so it's very important to us that we built on top of the underlying layer. The only piece of extra logic we ever added was this limit order registry contract, and all it does is manage limit orders going into Uniswap v3 pools. So what it does is you make your order in the pool, the Chainlink upkeep function is coming here and it's checking to say, hey, any of my limit orders that I've made, are any of them filled? Have any of them been crossed over at this point? And if they have been filled, now I need to call the perform upkeep function, and it's going to actually then move that liquidity out of the pool and leave it there for the actual folk, whoever made the limit order, to come back later and pull that liquidity out. And so the beauty of this is like we can really abstract all of it away, so that way the user only has to experience what you saw on the prior slide. What's happening here at the end of the day is a super simple process that, regardless of even in extreme volatile markets, Chainlink has proven through its Aave oracles or any other market that it's very good about handling volatility. I've firsthand seen markets that have just been instantaneously filled. Chainlink automation gets in the very next possible block to actually pull out that liquidity, and then the price reverts, and it functions perfectly how you'd expect as a limit order. Now, this is just a summary we've done with Automation 1.0. This is, for the large part, stuff that has been built out months ago, and we just launched Oku 2 months ago, so everything's still pretty fresh. That being said, yesterday, they launched the Automation 2.0, and they gave folks a preview of what's to come there, what's actually live today with OCR, with the data streams, and with log filters. It's a ton of fun. Now, over the last year, as we've been developing Oku, we've had a ton of folks come to us and make a bunch of requests. We've had by far the most number of requests for DCAs or dollar cost averaging. Folks have come to me and said, hey, Getty, I really want to be able to buy $10,000 worth of ETH over the course of a month through like 10 orders. And I don't want to have to worry about this. Like maybe right now they're using Coinbase to do it, and Coinbase is charging them like 3% to do it or something or other. They want just a simple on-chain place where they can trust it and they know it's just going to work. And that's a perfect use case for automation. Some folks have come to us and said, hey, stop loss orders and stop limit orders are an important way of how I trade it on centralized exchanges. Can you deliver that to me? Absolutely. And in particular, for folks who aren't really familiar with how these orders work, stop loss orders and stop limit orders. The only difference here is one's running a market order once you hit your stop, and one hits a limit order. And particularly with the existing limit order functionality we offer right now, this is actually a great use case, especially in DeFi, where these, all these tools that we're offering are available for every single Uniswap V3 pool, which I'm sure many of you know. Most pools are a bit, degen-like at the end of the day, where you're going to have a lot of volatility. Being able to place a stop limit order is a great piece of functionality for folks, so that way they know exactly what their fill is going to be once their stops hit. The next largest one that folks have come to us on is automated liquidity. This has been particularly an emerging field over the last year with Uniswap v3, and folks really trying to take advantage of the capital efficiency that's available in Uniswap and saying, how do I get as much as possible my capital into the middle range right where folks are actually touching liquidity. And the beauty of automation is we can set up something really simple to manage liquidity. We could say to folks, hey, what if I want to make sure I'm only providing liquidity plus or minus 5% of the current ETH USDC price, and maybe every single time it moves like 2.5% outside of these bounds, I want it to rebalance. And if we really want to get maybe extra fancy with it, we can add in like a volatility oracle and say, hey, if volatility gets too high, just remove the liquidity altogether and wait until volatility comes back down to redeploy. Super simple things like these that would otherwise be really difficult to do as an individual developer are made easy with automation. Lastly, the thing that I really have found interesting is smart orders. Now, everything we've talked about this far has been around the idea of like taking very common tools that are already popularly used on the main traditional exchanges and bringing them on chain. With smart orders, we can leverage Chainlink Automation's log triggers functionality and let folks actually come up with their own order types. We won't always be able to predict what folks want to do, but this allows us to build the tooling for them. So how does this work in triggers, which just got announced yesterday, is a pretty simple idea. Rather than having the existing automation contract that we have with our limit order registry, where you're running this check upkeep function and trying to see, hey, is someone's order filled? Do I need to do something? We could have an external contract that is being monitored by the Keeper network, and it's going to wait to see, hey, once an order has been filled, once something's happened somewhere else, maybe I'm waiting for a liquidation event to be published on another contract. I want to trigger some set of functionality. And so we can let users define what that contract and event is that they want to monitor, and then define on the other end what type of perhaps Uniswap v3 functionality. Do we want them to be able to remove a position, add liquidity to it? Do we want them to change their position altogether? Do they need to place a trade on a market? Do they need to place a sequence of trades? This can allow us to build something like a more modular system if we wanted to, such that folks can really define what they want to do without us having to necessarily do all the legwork and come up with all the different ideas that folks perhaps want to use. So the diagram here up on the screen really points us out quite simply. You have your log contract that actually you're waiting for to listen to this emit event that's been defined, the off-chain component that's calling this check log function constantly, and it's saying, hey, once the log has been actually called here on this other contract, Chainlink needs to simulate the actual payload that's going to go down to the form, the upkeep, and say, hey, I've checked the log. I want to make sure that I can actually run this function. Perfect. Let's pass it off to the actual contract that we care about where you're automating some functionality on. Let's perform that upkeep and then write it to the chain. So all in all, it's a pretty simple flow. Frankly, something that I've only had the opportunity to think about limitedly over the last few weeks. But I'm very excited to see what we can build and what other folks can build with the new log triggers. So all in said, we're very excited to continue bringing new trading functionality into the DEX world to get folks off of Binance and the traditional exchanges into the wonderful world of DeFi and really build the future of trading, but in a defined, safe place of Uniswap v3 and Chainlink automation. So thank you very much. That's the gist.